Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 119 of the Podcana podcast. This week, we are joined by two Lorcana experts in their fields. Of course, we have Sky joining us this week, who was technically on last week, but that episode was lost to time. So before he even won the CCQ, we did say to you guys we'd have him back this week. And now it just works out even better, you know? He was the first player for the second season of Competitive Lorcana to secure his invite to the NA Championship. So a huge pleasure to have you back on the podcast, Guy. Congratulations on your win. I watched the stream. Your run was absolutely insane. Of course, we'll be getting into your Amber Steel list throughout the episode. And we are also joined by Joseph Quigley, aka Lorcana Pandemonium, the green-blue master, who I feel like I've been watching so many videos of Joseph over these past few days across multiple channels. I know you did like a live stream with some other green-blue players, and shout out to J-Bomb and the Altered Academy. That was fantastic tips you gave for like being on the play, being on the draw versus different matchups. So yeah, I wanted to get Joseph on because I think green-blue is really coming up in the meta at the moment, and I wanted to dive into some kind of different versions, help educate you guys on different ways that you can build your green-blue decks to tackle a certain expected metagame. And I think that metagame is heavily influenced by Sky's amazing performance at this CCQ this past weekend. So, gentlemen, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. I think we'll start with you, Joseph, and we'll go to Sky. Like a little bit of a background maybe would be great on how long you've been playing Lorcana for. Have you played any other card games previously? That would be awesome.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for joining me. Really, a huge honor to be on Podcana. So I've been playing Lorcana since the very start of the game, day one. Been a blast. I'm probably most well known for top 16 at NA Continentals with Blurple. I've also been a long time yellow-green discard player. I topped top 32 in Chicago with that deck, and very fond of that one as well. And of course with green-blue the past couple of sets here, and it's been a wild ride with that deck. Before Lorcana, I played about 2.5 years of competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! I had one big top, but wasn't a huge name in that field. Lorcana's been my coming out TCG, so to speak, as far as trying to be a name, and it's been a pleasure.
Awesome, man. Yeah. Pass it over to you, Sky.
Yeah, I started my card game journey, I guess, when I was in middle school. I think I started playing Hearthstone. Fell in love with the game and had just a lot of fun. It was like just a fun thing to do with friends. The first physical card game I got into was Pokemon. I played that for about 4 years. I wasn't like super competitive with it, but I went to a couple regionals and kind of did the whole, world's points journey for one season. So that was a lot of fun. I played a little bit of Magic casually, but I started playing Lorcana in set 2. At that time, Red Purple was like 60% of the meta. It was kind of like a tyrant of the format. The online scene was kind of just starting up with some of the pack tournaments, and people were kind of getting interested in the competitive scene and deck lists popping up and such. I started out with Blue Steel. I found like the deck on I can't remember what website it was, but it was kind of underplayed, but it was like pretty well performing, it seemed like. And I fell in love with it, so I tested back in the Pixelborn days for about a week, and then I looked up if there was tournaments, and there was. I was like, this deck feels really good. I'm going to enter this tournament, and I won the tournament, and so that kind of kicked off my addiction to this game. I did the same thing the next weekend with Blue Steel, and I ran it back, and I also won that one. And that kind of kicked off, like, people were like, hey, I want to learn how to play this deck, all sorts of messages, and I started streaming it. And so fast forward all this time, and I am still playing the game. I didn't think I would be this involved, but the community is such a core part of this game, and like I honestly just much better than other card games. It's just like this kind of network of friends that like I've made along this way that have kept me in it. So, and I'm still going. So obviously this weekend was good to me, and I had some success recently. So yeah.
Yeah, man. Awesome to hear. You absolutely crushed it. Before we jump straight into these top performing decks from this week, I do want to just clarify. I know it's a big topic within the community at the moment. There was like a DQ at the PPG CCQ. People have been asking my opinion on it, Moyne's opinion on it. Not really going to talk about it right now. I think we're going to just kind of focus on Sky's victory, diving into what the next expected metagame is going to be. People have their opinions on it, and yeah, we're just going to leave that be for the moment. But yeah, let's jump straight over to those deck lists. So kicking things off, we have Sky's winning Amber Steel list from the PPG CCQ this past weekend. We talked about your deck last week on the podcast, Sky. You were on like the Be Our Guests. You weren't really on the Aurora package as far as I remember. You were on Captain Hooks. So I would love to hear your journey of, maybe what you experienced at Ink and what you wanted to change moving into the CCQ last weekend.
Sure, yeah. So I played, I would say, close to the same deck at Ink.
Yes.
It felt really good. I got my teammate Wonderland, who also brought it to the tournament, and a couple other people who played it, and they all said it felt really good. There was a couple things leaving the event that felt like it was like not super impactful. The Be Our Guest being one of them, it just didn't come up quite often enough. Like versus Blurple, it was good. It was very good late game when you needed to hit that dock. But that matchup is already just very good. So like that's probably not the thing that you want to be teching for. So I thought that could get cut. My teammate Kurt Spice also brought Amber Steel, who played 4 of Sven, which I kind of agreed seemed like a good call. There were some things that, just top decking the Sven at a time versus Blurple was better than a lot of stuff in the deck. So I wanted to try out Sven. I didn't really think about Aurora too much until like later on, but like I realized that she could play herself for free, and that like just that and playing Mulan for free, and then also just like the couple games where Tiana gets discounted, it just is like plenty to have enough synergy. Like I was like, oh, I don't want to play Snow White. I don't want to have to play these cards that I don't think are super good, just to like fill out the Aurora's value. But like what I learned at Ink was that you can just kind of sit there, especially going first with characters that like you don't have to open like Daisy, Nala, like a ton of lore. Like if you just go a 1-drop, it can just kind of sit there as a body because there's not much interaction in this format. And like later on, just get the value from it. So if you just go Aurora plus another character, then like that just threatens to do so many extremely powerful lines that like most decks can't handle, and they can't interact with the Aurora unless they play Fire the Cannons. So yeah, I started testing out Aurora. I didn't have a lot of time to test with it at all, but it felt so good the few games that I did play with it that I was like, this has to just be fine. Like at the very least, I'm not going to regret playing this. So I went into the Friday tournament not having many games on it, but it felt good. So
awesome. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things I've seen from this turn 1 Aurora, specifically into turn 2 Tiana, that I've noticed is it's actually very comparable to the Troubadour that you have in your deck, right? And that's something you talked about a lot last week, and it's this idea that if you just play the Troubadour, or if you open with Aurora into Tiana, you have an entire turn earlier that you can then sing Strength of a Raging Fire, and that gives you such a massive tempo advantage. Like some of the most powerful things that you can do is if you open like that, and then if you play something like a Lady and then a 2-drop, suddenly your strength is hitting for 4, and that, even if you're on the play, is particularly good, right? Like if
that line is super oppressive because this format has a lot of 1-drops that make it so they can trade back with the Aurora, so Tiana on 2 doesn't happen super frequently. But if they miss a 1-drop and you just drop a Tiana on 2, all of a sudden it's just insane because your Tiana's protecting your Aurora and you threaten to sing a strength for 4, so it's just there's almost nothing they can do at that point. They like if they missed the 1-drop, it's like you had one turn to play something to stop this and you missed it. So
yeah, I think the interesting thing that I've come across from my brief play testing of this deck after you won was still the idea of when to use the strength is actually very important, and that greatly depends on multiple different matchups. So say for example, if you're against an Amethyst Steel, you kind of want to have your strength to get rid of probably their 3-cost cards so they don't sing strength back at you. However, sometimes even if you sing that a bit early and then they establish a Genie can be a little bit tricky for you to take out. But at that stage, you should be so far ahead on tempo that you can kind of be pushing. Maybe you chain a few Petes in there to stop them playing the strengths back then against you. I think you're doing quite well. Speaking of Pete, do you want to touch on this? Because I think this is going to link into when we talk with Joseph about green blue a lot. Is this the main reason you found Pete to be valuable, or do you also find, I'm sure it has some uses within the Blurple matchup and Amethyst Steel matchup as well?
yeah, Pete is honestly like very very useless compared to what it used to be in a deck like this before rotation. Like even it used to be kind of like for the steel mirror for going second, if that's how you like stop them from singing strength first on their 3 cost and blowing out the game. But like that doesn't even happen super often with this deck. Part of the reason is probably because you just go so wide, and sometimes it's like, well, if I know they're going to be at first to the strength, I'm not going to play my one character Tiana. I'm going to play like 2 characters, like Lady plus character, and make them just take one of them. Yeah, but he doesn't come up super frequently. I cut him down to 3 versus 4. But he's really just in there versus green blue, like as a way to close out the game and like guarantee that they can't under the sea. Which is kind of strange because in that matchup, a lot of the times the way you win is just taking out their shift line so they can't sing it anyways. So like sometimes it doesn't even come up. Like there's games where they just only play 1/1 drop and you play a fire the cannon or even a strength on it and they can't shift till way too late. And it's like even if they get to the under the sea and you don't have the Pete, then you're at like 18 and they don't have much of a hand at that point because they never got to shift the Clara and have a huge grip. So he's like, he feels like he should be cut with the amount that I played him, and I was like, oh yeah, Pete did something. He really should be like cut, but with the emergence of green blue, and I think it's only going to get even more played, I think it's important to have him there. He's also just inkable, so it's not like it's a huge downside. There's not much else in the deck that you need, like the density of like super threatening curves you have is like already there. I don't think there's anything else that I could put in that slot that'd be like, yeah, my curve is stronger because of this, and I don't need this liability. So he's chilling there. He's there for the fun, there for the ride.
Yeah, I think if you're potentially suggesting to cut him, I think Joseph's secret like, yes, come on, please cut your Pete's.
Pete's always been such a thorn in my side ever since he was printed for pretty much every deck I've played.
Yeah.
This is definitely a world. It's shocking to be in a world where Pete is the worst he ever has been after being such a mandated staple for so long. But he's definitely got very good spots. However, I do agree that, in a sense, that Fire the Cannons is a much scarier card for Green Blue in a lot of ways, and is so strong and so good right now that I'm shocked it hasn't been more played before now.
Yeah, I think
it is wild that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yeah, I just think the cannons is incredibly important, and it's something you mentioned when you talked to us last week, Sky, that I think you had it on 2 and you wanted to include more, and you managed to do it. You put 3 copies in this week, right?
Yeah. Man. I mean, I was really only afraid of green blue. Every other deck I think is a very good matchup. Like I only won 4 die rolls out of like 14 over the whole weekend, and I still was able to feel just fine into every other matchup. So I was like, well, green blue is like what I need to focus on, like it, and cannon was like the way you did it. If they only played 1/1 drop and you played a cannon, in first or second, it just felt like it just put you so many turns ahead of what they could have, threatened and done, and it was just worth like the 19 uninkable. And it's like cannon's like great into every matchup. Like it has, I think it's the first time where it's felt like cannon has game into every deck that's out there. Every deck needs to play a 1-drop in this like kind of curve out meta. So like there's no 1-drops, there's no 1/3s being played where it's impactful. So it's like everything will get banished to cannon. So yeah, it's not, the only downside is just the games where like you get stuck with one in hand and somehow it didn't have like a good turn to play it. You didn't have that 1-drop plus 1-drop cannon start, and like you're like, well, I still kind of have to play a 2-drop, and then they might not play something that the cannon can banish later on.
I think it's a great point. Yeah, out of all of the main decks with the meta right now, like against Blurple, you can cannon their 1-drop. Against Purple Steel, same thing. If they have an illusion, it's actually even better because suddenly their Cobra just dies to this, their Raja dies to this.
Yeah, the illusion build is funny with this deck because like they want to play that 3-cost illusion because not only does it threaten the Tiana, they can just pay at any time to go through it, but it also sets up their turn foreplay with the Treasure Guardian. They want that card. So like if they don't play the Razul or the Palace card, you can like guarantee that they're trying to set up the illusion on turn 3.
Yep, definitely. Well, I think that's most of it for this deck list. I think the last thing I'd like to touch on is, again, it's weird. Something myself and Moyne spoke about last week, but we didn't actually say it on the podcast because the footage was gone. This Rhino, I know last week you talked about this 4-cost Rhino, like maybe not being as good as it used to be, at least for a specific opener. Usually you kind of want to go for this wider opener. Doing your shift Rhino line seems a little bit slower. it's not even like you get a great advantage because you can't like sing Zeus with any more Zeuses out of the meta. So do you think it still just lines up well to remain in the deck? Like, I guess playing a Rhino, even if that's like the last body you need to kind of get some lore, is still a sticky enough body that it's difficult to remove. So just curious on your thoughts on that package in general now.
Yeah, last time we talked, I was like, I could probably cut the Rhino, like at least the 4 cost. Like it doesn't do what it used to do in the deck. And like you said, it can't sing Storm on turn 2. It can't sing Zeus on turn 2. It really wasn't doing a whole lot. And I had it cut for a while, and I tried some other stuff. I tried the Bolt. Bolt was not good. I tried Force Fen, and honestly, Sven was pretty decent, but it just like still wasn't really that needed many games, so it's like not that much different. And the utility of Rhino just being able to sometimes just be like an ace in the hole versus the mirror. Like if they go Daisy on one, you're going second, and they have their like nut start of just like Daisy into like say triple Daisy. Just playing a Rhino 1 cost makes them play Daisy plus Cannon. And if they don't have that, then you're fine. And a lot of these aggro lists are not running Cannon, so just being able to threaten, even if you don't have the shift on turn 1, a 1 cost Rhino is pretty crazy. So I think it's like slightly better than the other options being played. Like I said, I think all the best cards are already in this deck. So like if you can scrape out some inkable utility in other matchups, and also just running more 1-drops is like great. So like it was like fine. Like as an extra top deck as a Rhino is pretty nice too, because it doesn't get hit by Under the Sea. It's also just pretty tough. So like if they tap it down with an Elsa, they might have to throw 2 things into it versus just 1. So it was like good enough, I would say.
Super interesting. Yeah, I think for me, if I was taking a look at this deck myself, I'd like maybe do what you said. Like I consider trying more Svens, but that's also like a fine kind of change. They're both inkable. Like that's something you could probably mess around with. But I do agree that for the most part, this list is like extremely tight, right? Like I think the only thing that's really removed from this list now is Captain Hook, which is like a pretty decent 1-drop that could have 3 strength into certain stuff. But besides that, I think the list is super tight, really difficult to make changes.
Yeah, Captain Hook was occasionally good in like trade back scenarios versus some decks, but like the games where you have what you wanted, like he wasn't needed. He was just questing for 1, so it wasn't a big trade-off.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Makes sense.
All right, we're gonna move into looking at 2 more Amber Steel lists before we jump over to Green Blue. The next one is by Doug Elliott, your opponent in the finals, who I have to say, by the way, played extremely well. Your finals was such a joy to watch. I kind of had to laugh at Twitch chat, because as Twitch chat do, they go, "Oh, it's an aggro mirror. Oh, this is so fun." I'm like, guys, you don't understand. Like, and because it was untimed, I actually personally found that to be even better. Like, you guys took the full time to really think about what you wanted to do. There was no like stress on you guys, and it was really, really interesting to watch. And I think it really highlighted that these aggro decks, while extremely strong, are not so simple to pilot. One wrong ink, one wrong move, and you can lose the game. So I think that was really, really important. I also really had to laugh when Doug played the Sven on your Tiana, and everybody lost their mind in the Twitch chat. When, I mean, it was a cool thing, but it didn't really help him in the situation too much. But I think when people saw that, they just freaked out, right? Yeah.
I think Sven was like, "Oh, the tech, it's so good versus Tiana, right? They can banish your other stuff." But like in reality, it's like really. Your Tiana's still living, and Tiana's the most threatening thing on your board, and it's going to be a problem next turn unless you have the strength then, which would have been better than Sven that turn.
Yeah.
So it's just like, okay, if you do that, I'm still questing to like 15 or 16, and you have to deal with another Tiana. So
yeah. So the biggest thing about Doug's deck, though, that I found quite interesting was it was playing some more just kind of aggressive 2-drops, maybe really leaning into this like lady package. So you've got like the Mr. Arrow, but one of the more interesting ones is this Prince, this 0/5 Prince. I don't know, like in some situations I can imagine this to be extremely useful, especially if you're against a deck that doesn't have so much, interaction the way a deck like Green Blue does, and really just cares about board presence and needs to be swinging into your things. Like if you do turn 1 Aurora into Tiana, and then you go Lady into the Prince, like I don't know what they're doing against that. That seems like super powerful.
That's what he did to me the game 2, and he had the strength too, so it was like completely blown out. But in that scenario, I would say that the Prince didn't really matter. He could have played anything. It was just having a strength. And that's what I've kind of noticed with those like 2-drop bodyguards is like, the Prince might be good enough because he has five toughness, which is much better than 4 in this meta. But it's uninkable, and it's kind of like you have to trade off playing something like Fire the Cannon over the Prince, which is just much more impactful in my opinion, versus like a ton of matchups to just do what you want and shut them down for that 1-drop. It's great. It feels great when you like do those plays where it's like, well, you can't do anything now, but like in reality, Tiana is like crippling enough to where it's very few like scenarios that like the Prince is going to save you if they have the answer to Tiana.
Yep, I think that makes sense. The final Amber Steel list. This is Alex Hansen's build. He got top 8 at PPG. Managed to fit in those Fire the Cannons, and alternatively opted to play the inkable version of the Prince, which is Jim Deere. It's a 0-4. But I think that's very important what you mentioned, the fact that this has 4 willpower compared to 5. Do you want to speak upon why maybe that breakpoint and that difference is so important? My initial thought is because of how much strength can hit for easily if you do certain openers, but I guess against like bodies as well, it's probably quite important, right?
Yeah, strength is a consideration. It's a lot easier to hit 4 versus 5, especially if you're not running Aurora.
Yep.
But it's also stuff like Elsa plus Genie is 4,
Yep.
and like stuff like when Purple Steel used to be running like the Madam Mim skaters, like a Captain Hook could hit for 4 then, which is like if you go all in on a play where versus Purple Steel where your bodyguard needs to stay up and then they hit the Madam Mim and then they hit, like that kind of just opens the gate for you to probably get like a really bad trade back on your turn. I don't know, like I didn't test the Prince, so like my theory of why 4 is much less than 5 is just kind of based on like those math, but maybe it doesn't even matter. Maybe the Prince is still just like not great for what he does. So
yeah, no, it is super interesting. And then the only other difference here is we see the When Will My Life Begin, which we touched upon last week. It was in Kurt's deck previously. So
yep, I had tried that too with I think going into Ink. That was my list when I got there, and Kurt seemed to like it. I seemed to like think it wasn't quite enough situations where it was relevant. It was kind of just a bad top deck because you had to spend 3 ink to get to a character then. I think what happened with this was another player from TFM, Ben, who I played at Ink, who I had beaten in Top Cut, told me that he had built this deck right after that because he was like, I want to, it felt insane what I did to him. I had insane draws versus him. And his teammate picked it up, and I think he went with more of Kurt's list and keeping the 2 When Will My Life Begin.
Cool. Yeah. No, super cool to see. I think, honestly, I was happy to see Amber Steel do so well. Like, I think week to week, it's just nice to see. I mean, in Ink, yes, Amber Steel did very well also, but still, like, there was enough adaptation and differences between your list this week and your previous list that I still found it really, really enjoyable.
It's been quite a comeback since week 1, where everyone was really down on Amber Steel that first week, and now it's like, now everyone's scared of it again.
Yep, 100%. Speaking about being scared of it, we are going to move on to green-blue. I do want to give a shout out to the players who I believe they got to top 8 with green-blue. I don't have their names in front of me, but I will shout them out before we move off the green-blue section. I'll find it. So, green-blue versus Amber Steel. I don't think there could be 2 better people on the podcast right now to talk through a lot of these different things. And I have to say, already, Sky mentioned some really, really, really important things. The number one thing to think about, at least for me in a lot of this testing against Amber Steel, is your shift Clarabelle targets. Fire the Cannons is extremely good against your 1-drop Clarabelle. It's actually a big reason why sometimes after you ramp, if you can kind of do it, you want to do double. You want to try and play like another Clarabelle, or at least present your Amber Steel opponent with so many shift targets that they can't remove all of them, right? Maybe they high roll and they do cannons and strength. I mean, that's just like the god hand from them. But the biggest thing is actually realizing, like, I think on the Amber Steel player side of things, the importance of, I might have to use my strength on this 1-drop, because if I don't, it's completely different, right? I think that's something that some maybe newer Amber Steel players, or people who are like, maybe they saw Sky's list and they want to pick it up for the first time, maybe they face a lot of green-blue. This might be a hard lesson that they have to learn, that they really have to value all of the different Clarabelle shift targets. So I'll pass this over to you, Joseph. You can take it away. This is my Pleakley build. By the way, feel free to you can rinse through this. You could say I changed this ratio, I changed that. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, but yeah, go for it.
Honestly, this build seems pretty fine to me and is pretty close to what I've been testing. The only thing I would say is I probably want the fourth Clarabelle 3-drop for the reason you mentioned of it's so important to have a density of shift targets, especially now that deck is getting even more hate. Especially on the draw when things are tougher, when you know that no matter what you're playing, that one drop is going to get answered on the draw, so you need to force them to have two answers, and then if they don't, you can hopefully get that shift down more consistently. So I really like running the 12 Clarabelle package, I guess you could call it, for that reason. Amber Steel's tough, especially with the builds that I have liked to play over these past couple of weeks. It's funny the dynamic that I've seen where like some Amber Steel players are like, I really don't want to have to deal with green blue because they attack in a different way than other decks where they don't care about challenging, they're just going to try to board wipe you all at once. But as a green blue player, I'm also terrified of Amber Steel because they give me the least amount of breathing room in the format where like I always have the option of the long game against most decks. Against Amber Steel, I don't have that option. I need to secure an under the sea line or I'm probably going to die. And so that's and as a result, I think a lot of games in this matchup can be really big blowouts where Amber Steel denies you your line and he gets quest for a gazillion in like 3 turns and you're dead. Versus green and blue find that under the sea on turn 3, turn 4, turn 5. Amber Steel can never get back on board after that resolves, and it feels so. I think both sides of the matchup can end up just feeling really bad and like it's a bad matchup, and I think it comes down a lot to tech choices. But right now, I do think Amber Steel has an edge unless green and blue decides that it's going to build a lot more strongly for Amber Steel.
Yep, I think some great points raised there. We will definitely dive deep into green blue now, talking about like I have this Pleakley build versus a non-Pleakley build, some of the advantages that it might have into Amber Steel and into the other decks. One card I do want to mention before we really get into things is the Shift Baymax. We've seen a lot of these included in other green blue lists because it really helps you to sing that under the sea early. So that's actually like a great inclusion if you like really expect a massive field of Amber Steel. I think that's going to help you out a lot.
Absolutely.
However,
that's like the number one tech choice we
yes.
can play into Amber Steel is Shift Baymax,
but yes, there is a but. Shift Baymax overall, I am personally not a big fan of the card because yes, it helps you in your Amber Steel matchups, but in a lot of your other matchups, I would just rather it be a better card. It's not a very good uninkable if you're not doing the shift specifically. So, since kind of, but that's the funny thing because I look at all of the decks that have made top cut or like that have done really well green blue, they're all on Baymax, which is kind of the funny thing. But like just because they're all on Baymax doesn't necessarily mean that that's not the way to go as well. So,
I think most green and blue minds have arrived at Shift Baymax feels like a very not good card a lot of the time, where every uninkable slot matters and it can feel a little bit low impact into Blurple, into now green blue itself in the mirror, where I think it's not the biggest card, and you're going to feel really bad when it bricks you as the 6 cost uninkable. However, if you want to respect Amber Steel and aggro, and I think that's going to be a consideration we have to make after this weekend and how well Sky did. It might be a necessary evil type of card where Amber Steel is enough of a percentage of the metagame that we might have to slide him in even if it feels kind of bad.
Yep, I agree. So some of the stuff I want to talk about is maybe some of the best lines that we can do to tackle the Amber Steel players, and obviously that's going to depend if you're kind of on the play, if you're on the draw. But looking at the Pleakley version in particular, this idea of kind of double ramping pretty fast to get to your cards, like the John Silver, to start giving the Amber Steel players characters reckless. Like if you give a Tiana reckless, and let's say your John Silver is exerted, that feels terrible for the Amber Steel player to literally just have to send their Tiana into the John Silver. There's a lot of other things as well. Like I know previously people were talking about like Louis. Yes, Louis in theory is a good card against Amber Steel, but it just is really difficult to fit into the curve for this deck in my testing. You've also got like Heffalumps and Woozles, which again potentially could be included. It pairs really well with like Tipo. So say for example in this Pleakley list, you could do like Heffalumps and Woozles, sung by Tipo, and then you can do Pleakley. Granted, that's like really early, but there's a lot of like small inclusions you can do there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'd love to hear like your idea of the kind of this giga ramp into John Silverline.
So I'll start. I guess one touch on Hefflumps. It's a card that I was testing for a while, and I do think it's a good inclusion potentially. It's like a pretty safe card, I guess, as a cycler. So you could very easily slide it into Respect Aggro a bit more, and also as an illusion buster.
Mhm.
As far as Pleakley goes, Pleakley into John Silver, I think, is a very solid line into Amber Steel on the play, where you don't necessarily have to turbo out a shift line as fast on the play, and Pleakley and John Silver can at times buy you enough time to get to Under the Sea when you're on the play, and it's not too vulnerable to cannons, which is a big upside. You do, of course, you could get your Pleakley target cannons, which sucks, but hopefully you play 2 down so that doesn't happen. Although I have been double cannons before on a Pleak, and that felt really bad. But make them have it. On the draw, I do think the line is probably too slow most of the time, unless Amber Steel stumbles. I found that, and even in my screen matchup PCS, where Pleak and John Silver just could not stall them out fast enough when you were on the draw, and you're probably going to lose that game most of the time. So, it can be a case of like hope to win the die roll and stick to that line, but if you're on the draw, it's going to be a rough run. You need more of that aggressive shift line to make it work.
For sure, yeah. And the shift line is very much the main focus of this deck. If you can get that shift Clarabelle off, it is absolutely huge. Of course, that's going to help you to just stick a big body and then also sing Under the Sea. I was curious to get your thoughts, and maybe this applies more to the second build we're going to show off shortly. But if you're on the draw versus Amber Steel, the idea of still sticking with this this Donald Duck, and again, something you mentioned, Sky, earlier, like 5 willpower is so important. Again, for like if you're against Amber Steel, it's very difficult for them to be able to easily strength this. Again, they can like maybe like super high roll and do it. But I don't know, like
I will say with the
go ahead.
With Aurora, Aurora opens up a lot of lines where you can hit the 5, which is why it felt so crazy, because like it used to be like, oh, they played a Scrooge, now I gotta like do some hard stuff. Or John Silver, it's like much harder. But that's kind of like what was like the most insane part about Aurora, was like all the stuff that was now out of reach of strength became like there's several lines where it was pretty common to hit for 5, but it is still like you have to have it. It's not like guaranteed every time. It's a lot of cards.
I think you need a lot of cards for it to be like the perfect counter. But like you said, it can happen, and it's actually just worth keeping in mind of these different things.
That's kind of the downside of Donald, though. That does make me worry a little bit. I mean, he's a reasonably steady play on turn screen to a lot of matchups, but I'm a little bit more wary of giving Amber Steel cards specifically than I am into particularly any other deck, just because of how scary the aggression is. And if you're not setting up an Under the Sea fast enough, where Under the Sea is coming down, potentially if you go like Donald into 5 drop, assuming you're not like shifting. I mean, if you're shifting and Donald lives, like you're fine, but you're kind of expecting your shift target to die most of the time if it's only a 1 shift target. And so I'm a bit worried about, giving them so much gas that I can't come back unless I'm singing it on, I guess, the turn or the turn after, and the Donald just ending up getting shot by strength because they've gotten more characters off the Gexia.
Yep. I think I am going to just briefly move on to the next list here, because there is another 4-drop option in this build. So this is a non-Pleakley build. So we have like the Donald, we also have the Scrooge as well. Scrooge, just like a super solid body, not only against Amber Steel, but even against decks like Blurple. Like they can't really send like Elsas or Genies or anything into this. Like this like 5/5 trades into them so well. But the idea of the Scrooge, I think, is pretty nice as well. Yes, it's uninkable. That's can be a little bit tricky at times. But the idea of singing some of these songs with these 4-drops, such as the Mother Knows Best, the You're Welcome, of course, these combo extremely well with the 7-cost Clarabelle. But I think some of the tempo that you can potentially try to regain from that is really important. So if you're able to do like a Mother Knows Best or You're Welcome, probably preferably Mother Knows Best rather than You're Welcome, because again, like you said, you're going to be giving them more cards. But if you can use
Mhm.
that to like bounce their Tiana back to their hand, or bounce like their kind of key singer target, so that somehow you're able to, like, if you have your 4-drop, you sing Mother Knows Best, and then you play maybe this 5-cost Donald, for example, or even another 4-drop as a follow up, then you kind of have your Under the Sea active. So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, Joseph, on like some of those particular lines and how effective you find them against Amber Steel, maybe.
I do think Must Knows Best is a very solid card into Amber Steel. As far as the uninked slot conversation goes, it's definitely going to do more for you than Hades typically will in that mid game where it really counts. And getting that tempo is so big to eventually get to a point where you're dropping bombs that they can't deal with as easily. Scrooge has been a card that I've never been the most fond of, to be honest. And I'm not. He's not. He's a pretty good card. He's like very strong, especially on the play when you can get him down in turn 3. For me, it's always been a case of every uninkable slot matters in this deck so much, and there's so much power choices that you can choose with the uninkables, whether Must Knows Best or Hades or an extra copy of Under the Sea. Going up to 4 is probably going to be a pretty reasonable idea in the weeks ahead. Where I don't necessarily want to dedicate the slots to Scrooge, who is slow. I think Donald Duck 5-drop is a very reasonable ramp option. He's more steady than Pleakley, but less high rolls than Pleakley. But he's perfectly valid to play as an inclusion, but I'm not as high and Scrooge. And I think against Amber Steel specifically, I feel like Baymax just does more because he's faster,
Mm-hmm.
because he can sing Under the Sea faster, of course, because he can threaten that, because he can punish the Amber Steel player if they quest more aggressively by having effectively being a Scrooge with Rush. And being a lot more threatening in that regard. Whereas if you put down a Scrooge, I feel like Amber Steel can potentially just sit back for a bit longer and just wait till they can deal with it and then start questing. I don't know what's your perception of Baymax versus Scrooge Sky and how threatening you find either of those as an Amber Steel player.
Yeah, you're right. Baymax is much more threatening. If they go with the Scrooge line, it's just like, well, do you have the strength? Or even we were talking about the double ramp with Pleakley into John Silver.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if they do that is, like, I think most Amber Steel players are, well, you should always save your strength versus this matchup, and it's pretty reasonable if you get an extra turn to play enough characters to just strength the John Silver, then they're just in a really bad spot because
Mm-hmm.
they're still not on 8 ink. They can't hard cast Under the Sea. They don't have singers on board to sing it. It puts them in a spot where if you follow that up with a Pete, you probably just straight up win because you're just going to quest out to that point. Yeah, it's kind of along those lines where it's just if you're playing a character per turn that's big, it's not threatening enough. It still doesn't get through Tiana. Tiana's still very good in this matchup because that's kind of a route that you can force if you have your preferred removal. You can't just force the shift Under the Sea right away. But Baymax can put you in spots where it's very hard to do that. Like if they go 1 cost into Tipo, obviously you're probably not removing both of them, and you're always going to threaten to shift Baymax. So then your Amber Steel player can't quest, on turns, 2 and 3 if they're going second. It puts them at much less lore, and they kind of have to just wait for their Tiana to come through and tax them. So Baymax is really the key of threatening to not only stop them questing, but to just blow out the game if they just have it, which is kind of unfortunate because that's what turned me away from this deck. I love green blue in set 7 after the bans happened. I thought it was extremely good. It was just Pete was just a little bit too much, and
Yeah.
there's too many games where if they had the second Pete that you just couldn't play at all. But now this deck feels like you don't have many cards at all, and you can't always have Clarabelle to give you a lot of cards like you could in that set versus all the matchups. So you kind of just are like, well, this matchup's not bad, but I kind of just have to have it, and that's just not something that I'm super comfortable or like to sleeve up for tournaments like this. It kind of feels like all the work that you put in is just put down to, like, did you have it at that point? But that might be the numbers are good enough to where it's at. So it is interesting to see the people debate whether or not Baymax is good in other matchups versus like the Mirror or Blurple. I've heard it both ways. I've heard people say that's how you win on the play is you threaten the Baymax, and if you have the shift and Under the Sea, it takes off their 1-drops and all their shift targets. They're so far behind. And I think that actually has more validity than people are kind of giving it credit for. I think people see lists with like more ramp and Pleakley, and they say, oh, well, this is, I'm gonna go over top, right? I'm way over top, but they disrespect, I guess, the tempo you get from just a big body that's gonna be on the board and your opponent having nothing for a few more turns. So yeah, I
Um,
think shift bait. Go ahead.
with regards to that line, I do agree that the shift Baymax line can be potent in the mirror. I played Zan in the mirror, and I heard them talk about how that was kind of the game plan that Zan Jeremy built at CCS, which was running Scrooges and Baymaxes and no Hades. Their game plan was, I guess, go for on the draw, hard mull or aggressively mull perhaps, for shift Baymaxing honestly on turn 3, get rid of the shifts, and then you hopefully just win from there. I do think it's a good line. I found when I was playing against Sand that I was still able to come back from that because usually you're devoting a lot of resources into that line as a green-blue player, and whereas you blow out aggro with that line because they don't have the resources or the bodies to come back, in the mirror, I think you have a lot more room and flexibility to potentially come back with your big drops, your Hades or your Basils, etc., to fight back for tempo over time. So I definitely think it has more merit in the mirror than people do give it credit for, but it's definitely never going to be the be all end all as it goes.
Sure. Even talking through that, I was just saying to Joseph before we started the podcast, like I've been testing green blue a lot over these past few days, and I'll give a shout out to my testing partners Ben and Jordan. We're like one day we're like, okay, we're on the Pleakley build, and the next day, nah, Pleakley's not good enough, and then we're back on the Pleakley build, and it's like everything keeps changing a little bit, and even that discussion there, like, yeah, now I think I'm going to go back to actually testing the Shift Baymax a lot more because of course, as we know, yes, it's pretty good into the Amber Steel meta, and maybe Sky will force this this very potent Amber Steel meta potentially over the next few weeks. But I'm very very interested in this particular list. Yeah, it kind of seems like the Shift Baymax is a very acceptable replacement or slot for the Scrooges right here.
Or you could just split it down the middle and run 2. I've seen a few people run 2, and it's like, I think it's one of the few cards where it's good enough to just be a threaten to where they have to respect it. Like the scariest match of my top cut this weekend was versus green blue in top 8, and he ran the 2 Baymax, and I was like, well, I still have to respect it. Like I can't. I'm in a good enough spot where if I can still win if I respect it, but if I don't, I'm probably blowing him out. But it's still just like such a threatening thing that if he has it, like I can't quest with, even with the triple Daisy Star, I probably can't quest with my Daisy yet. I have to wait for my Tiana. So
that yeah,
I agree. It's like it's not a card that I think I personally want to go above 2 of. Although maybe there's a version of like Zan's build where you find a way to run all of them. But 2, I think, is kind of my limit for how much I could stand sometimes drawing it in the iffier spot.
That's why you got Bobby though. Bobby can fix that, man.
Bobby helps, but Bobby's not a miracle. But he's nice.
Yeah, I think it's also like funny, like maybe you do the one of and you accidentally drop it before you start your match, like, oh oops, and you show them that you're maybe playing 4, and yeah, I mean there's nothing against you, you're revealing what you're playing to your opponents. But yeah, I think it's interesting that it's like one of those cards where you're just like gambling. Well, do I want to gamble today or do I want to not?
One other card we should mention that can operate similarly to on either of these lists is the Shift Basil line, which San also run, which can similarly, threaten that turn 3 under C or turn 3 big body, and is inkable, so it feels a little bit less bad. The downside, of course, being that the shift line is less flexible, so they can cannon to your Basil and you lose access to that completely, whereas Baymax can go onto anything. As well as requiring more deck build space. We have to dedicate 8 slots, which can feel pretty rough sometimes. But it's definitely an option worth looking at if you really want to hit on aggro.
Definitely, yeah. I think that's quite interesting for sure. And the other card I want to mention, this is just in relation to the green-blue mirror, is the importance of Bend. The importance of Bend. Bend is... I don't know, I've played a few green-blue mirrors now, and sometimes it just feels like, okay, if I'm in the perfect situation where I play my one of Bend, there's like so much digging you have in this deck with the develops, with the visions, with the Donalds. If you play the Bend at the right moment and my opponent just doesn't top deck their big Clarabelle and then they redraw all the cards, then it kind of shuts the game out. So I think, sometimes people might be saying, okay, it might be a crazy Amber Steel meta. the bend is just another card that's like so useless. It's like this bend is not only good in the green-blue mirror, it's really good against Blurple. Um, and I think it's actually a very necessary card, personally, from the testing I've had within this deck. Is that something you feel you agree with, Joseph?
I'm at that spot as well. I've definitely seen some debate in regards to running this card. We're so desperate for an inkable slots, it kind of looks like a card that you can consider cutting. And I don't think it's inherently invalid to cut it in favor of trying for more perhaps consistent cards or trying to squeeze in the Shift Baymax in, for instance. But it is very solid into Blurple and can have some great spots there. And in the mirror, it does feel like it is such a mirror breaker at times. You get into these interesting wars in the mirror where you're trying to keep Clarabelle on in park just to have insurance for the bend where they can't bend you. But the absolute, like, I found the mirrors to actually be pretty skill testing and like actually some decent back and forth. But the one card that makes that not happen is bend. And when you stick a Clarabelle and they go like Sing Much Knows Best into bend and it's just over. It's like you can't do anything at that point. And having the possibility of doing that is really potent.
100%, yeah. Before I move off of green blue, there's one more card I wanted to mention. Again, my testing partners, we were just looking through the card pool. I don't think it's a very good card. Maybe it could be a one of, a two of. So it's a 4-cost uninkable within Sapphire. It's a 2/3 quest for 2. It's Belle of the Ball. So she herself has ward, and when you play her, you can give another character ward as well. So I don't know. This is like the giga insurance against the Amber Steel. You cannot strength my characters. It seems maybe not so good, but I don't know. I like the idea. I like exploring. I like looking at some kind of different options. Have you even had a look at that card, Joseph, or you think it's too much of a meme?
So before you brought it up, I'll be completely transparent and say this is never a card that I had considered in this deck.
Okay.
I think it was like I saw it was an inkable, and my eyes kind of just glazed over it because I'm just like, every inkable matters. I can't afford to play this card.
Yeah.
But upon you like mentioning it and me thinking about it, I actually have a local who is very fond of this card in Blurple for a while. Shout out Carrie. It's not the worst idea. Like, it could have some interesting potential on the play or even on the draw where like she's a flexible card to say like, okay, now my 1-drop Kerbal doesn't die to Elsa, so she's kind of serving as like a 3-drop Kerbal, but she can also sing your welcome, which is nice. In the late game, ward is so important against both Blurple and the mirror, where you're just trying to maintain singers on board, and if you're behind, it can be really tough to stick down those singers, even if you have a lot of ink, because they're just going to keep answering it when you're trying to find a way to get to the combo. Potentially doing something like Bell into like another card, even a 7-drop if you're at 11 ink or some other mid-range card, having enough so they can sing the heads held high and then under the seat come back could be interesting. I'm not sure if it's going to have enough power level to be roughly on ink slot, but it's gotten my gears turning. It's a very intriguing slot.
Yeah, because even in the mirror, sometimes it's like if your opponent just gets to like their 4-drop first and then they sing some sort of removal on like your 4-dropper, like this whole idea of like, yeah, okay, whoever's in the play in the green blue mirror, just make sure the shift line doesn't happen. If this card fits in at the perfect time, it could be good. But I think the important thing about that card is exactly what you mentioned. It's like not this kind of dream card that's like, oh, it's only good against Amber Steel, against like the cannon stuff. Against the Elsa, it's actually very important because Elsa is the only real interaction that the Blurple players have outside of Hades. It also kind of works well against Hades as well. So yeah, shout out to Ben and Jordan for telling me about that card earlier. It's interesting that it sparked a cool discussion.
Absolutely.
Yep. Okay.
I have to try it, honestly.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna move on to talking about Blurple list. Shout out to Jordan, fellow Lemon Lime enjoyer. I know we've probably interacted with him a lot, Joseph, previously when we played.
Oh yeah, Jordan's a great guy.
Amber Emerald Discard. And Jordan on the Monstros within Blurple, which is for the most part in the previous versions I haven't seen too many people running it, is on quite a hefty amount of second start to the right. But Sky, I want to bring this to you because you played against Jordan in your semifinals match, and this is a match, I believe it was your last game, where I was so nervous for you. I'm watching the stream. Of course, we have the open information. I was like, it feels like Jordan has this game locked. It was so he'd like really good answers to your opener, but was that the game that you went quadruple Tiana? It might have been. Yep.
Yes, that was the game I went quad Tiana, and I misplayed terribly by questing with my Tiana and giving him hypnotic strength out. I think that's what kind of opened up the game to where he could have done some things and extended it. I think even with all that, I thought through it a lot that I was still in a fine spot with the Fortiana. But if I wouldn't have done that, I would have for sure just been locked up. And if I would have just waited, even if he plays the Elsa and sings the one into the unknown, that's an answer to one. But his board is still so slow; he can never outrace me. And I still have 3 more Tianas to just play one by one and wait a turn until 2 of them are tapped sideways. So.
Yeah, I think there was a particular turn where it was super difficult for Jordan, where he had the decision to try and I think play an Elsa, which could have taken out your Daisy.
Tap the Daisy. Yeah, that still doesn't end up in a spot where he's favored unless he like top decks like what he needs. I think.
And that's the thing. I think a lot of people, again, we're in Twitch chat. We have all the open information. We're saying, oh, maybe this line is better, but ultimately, even if it was, it's like maybe it wouldn't have helped a lot. But it was just, went for the Genie Basil line. You punished with the fire the cannons on the Basil.
The Basil Genie line was fine too, because I think it might actually be better. I think you just have to hope I don't have the cannon for the Basil, because it lets you quest support something, take something out manually, and after swinging into the unknown on one of them. So like it's like a way to break the Tianas more effectively than just like putting a band-aid on the situation and tapping down a Daisy. That's fine if you have like triple into the unknown, because he just sang a couple and then you're chilling, but like he just didn't have that. So
there's one thing I want to discuss with you, Joseph, in relation to Blurple, because as you mentioned as well, you've played a lot of this deck in previous sets. So the first thing is develop your brain. We talked about this a lot last week. The idea of develop your brain inclusion within Blurple. Some players weren't playing it last week. I'm pretty high on it. I think it works really nicely with Sail. I think it helps you find some of your pieces a little bit better. If you really need to find ramp, it's good. If you want to do Sail and to develop to find the perfect 4-drop that you need, I think it's pretty good. But I'm curious on, because I'm trying to remember from, I know it's a different deck with the green-blue stuff, but like the idea of develop in the opening hand, it's like, do you keep or do you not keep? Yeah.
That's like a math guy question.
Yeah.
I'm not a math guy per se. I think the consensus is, I think Chris Anderson posted something about this, where if you like only see one, you toss it, but if you see multiple, you would keep one, or something like that. I'm probably a guy who will toss it, especially in green blue, because like you want to play a 1-drop on one so often, whereas I think Blurple can get away without doing that more often. So in green blue, I'm probably tossing. In Blurple, I think if you're looking for ramp, it's more correct to toss more of the time. I definitely agree that develops a good card in Blurple, though I feel like Blurple, more than any other deck, just cannot stand missing ramp, and develop makes much more sense than, say, trying to run one jump. Like I've seen people do, and I've always been like, just play develop.
I heard some people were playing at PPG. Yeah, some people were like, yeah, I'm on some one jumps as well to like really increase the number. So that's quite interesting. The other thing I wanted to talk about was Second Star. Second Star is a card that very much came into the meta kind of out of nowhere. I guess like this card was always perceived as like so slow, so unplayable. Ursula 2-drop was in the meta so much, you can snipe it so easily. But I did notice in some of your previous versions of Green Blue, you played Dig a Little Deeper. And I know some people who've been testing Blurple who've been trying Dig rather than Second Star. And I personally find that quite interesting, because I feel like the amount of times you are able to have the big enough board to have the Second Star. I also had some opponents saying, like, if we're doing open testing, it's like, yeah, I could do the Second Star. It's probably always correct to do the Second Star. I sing up my characters, get this card advantage. I could also quest. I mean, that's the interesting thing to say. Okay, like, do I want the value? Do I want the tempo? But for a card like Dig a Little Deeper, I feel like it's so much easier to fit in, because like you've got so many 4-drops in this deck, and it's like I think it's a lot more likely that you might have like a 4 and a 4, or even like a 4 and a 5 sticking around than exactly enough to get the 10 or over. Right? Would you agree with that?
I definitely think it has merit, and it's probably worth the Blurple players looking at, especially because you really hate it when Second Star rots in your hand, and Dig is a little bit more flexible in that regard. Second Star definitely has a much higher power level,
Hmm.
though. I mean, I guess that, 2 cards versus 5, obviously. But I don't think it can be understated just how much more powerful that can be in a lot of spots. But the meta might be such that, like, the only deck that Second Star really targets particularly well is that mirror, where you can get punished for drawing 5 cards against green and blue, where they'll often have an out, or you really need to quickly dump it, or you could leave too much clear about value. Where either card is probably not what you care about against Amber Steel. I don't know about Purple Steel, but I don't know how often you're really resolving, Second Star versus Purple Steel in a lot of spots. So if Second Star is only really for the mirror, and the mirror is still a massive consideration, in fairness, like Blurple is still the top deck in the meta, no doubt. But you might want Dig instead, just to have a little bit more flexibility as a card that can do a bit better into the other matchups that are not Blurple than Second Star can, I think.
Yep, I think that makes sense. Sky, have you any other comments on Blurple in general? I'm curious, what was the matchup that you faced the most across your entire run over the weekend?
It was definitely Blurple. I
Okay.
played everything at least once, but it was probably at least half my matches were against Blurple.
Hmm.
There was one thing to say when I, saw this deck list and I was playing Jordan, was the absence of the 8-cost Elsa. I didn't pay attention I didn't look at all the lists before, like the night before when they posted them. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, I think I'm in a very good spot to be fine even on the draw. Obviously, like on the draw is harder than this meta, but this is a deck that, especially against Blurple, has many ways where you can kind of flip the odds and make it a very fair game. And especially when they don't have the 8-cost Elsa, so that card is like the bane of your existence when games do go long and you kind of go back and forth when you're going second. A lot of times when they get to that second star at the very end of the game, they get like one Hades and one big Elsa, and like it's like, well, that's like two turns of answers where like I can't really do anything. But without that, Hades just I usually is not enough in those spots. So like you're pretty comfortable going into those late games where you're on the draw and you don't need like the insane explosive stuff. That being said, there is still like explosive stuff that you can do on the draw that even if they have it, you can still come out on top. A lot of it is to do with that Aurora. Like if you go Aurora on turn 1 and Troubadour, all of a sudden, instead of having to go Lady plus character, just 2 characters and have the strength, we can go Tiana plus character plus strength. And that's still 4, and you have a Tiana on board that's ready to quest next turn and protect your stuff. So, yeah, just the Monstro, I'm not sure what it's there for. I thought some people said it was for the mirror because it can hit like Hades and other stuff, but
I know what
Joseph
it's there for.
Joseph
It's
is
there
raising
for
his hand.
me.
It's there for green blue. All right, yeah, just sweep through
Um,
that board.
Yeah, so GDRR has been advertising this card. He put a tweet out about like, this is the card that makes green and blue players kind of cry, because it's always going to trade 2-for-1 into us. It gets Hades down, it gets the Clarabelle we've tapped, and it has that critical 6 attack that cannot be hit by heads held high on NST. So we all have to trade into it, which feels really bad. It's very strong into green blue. But I do absolutely think Sky is correct that a lot of our players are making that trade-off of Big Elsa into Whale instead. That gets you points into Green Blue, which it seems fair enough when Green Blue's on the rise, but definitely costs you points into Amber Steel. I don't know if there's a point where you can justify both cards in a deck, but it's kind of the trade-off you're making.
Sure.
Sure, and it is inkable, so maybe that's why he's running 3-star instead of like the standard 1 or
Yeah.
2.
Mm-hmm. For sure. The last list I wanted to take a look at was Tiago's list. It's Purple Steel. This is from the 5K on Friday from PPG. I do know, again, there. By the way, if I haven't shouted out the green blue players as well, I'm not forgetting you. Please, guys, check the description of the video. If I can't remember their names right now, like full credit to them for making it. I also want to say there was a Purple Steel player that made it within the top 16, I believe.
I believe that was an incorrect deck list.
Oh,
I've
okay.
heard that it was actually the list was submitted wrong. It was actually a Blurple player. Apparently, there were no Purple Steels in Top
Wow.
Cut and the CCQ, which was interesting for sure.
Okay. Well, then never mind that, but check out the green blue players for sure. So yeah, I want to take a look at Tiago's list because obviously Tiago's very much made a name for himself, kind of winning back-to-back events with Purple Steel. This particular version is similar to the version he played previously that was very high on the illusion package with this Treasure Guardian. However, has opted to take out a lot of the Palace guards, all of the Palace guards, and even including Dolores Madrigal as kind of um, a different Treasure Guardian. The only condition now is that one of your opponent's characters have to be um, exerted. So that's kind of like the main change that I can see within this particular purple steel list. But I'd love to pass this over to you, Sky, because we talked a lot about like there's a few different versions of purple steel that you can build for sure, and I'm curious to see if we will see lists with the Madam Mim Skater performing a little bit better. Maybe if you personally feel like that might help out against something like Amber Steel, like with all these illusions as well. I think if you're a green blue player, there's funny stuff you can do with the heads held high and just like pop all of their illusions, which is like little bit silly. But yeah, curious
Sure,
maybe
yeah.
on this
Love doing
version
that.
into Amber Steel, and then maybe if you what can you add to this to maybe help against the Amber Steel matchup?
Yeah, just to start off, personally, I think Purple Steel's like not in a great spot. I don't know why it's like the people's favorite. People think it's like, oh, this honest deck that can kind of have game into everything and grind into everything, which is fine. I mean, you're always going to be like not getting blown out, but I think it's got to be like very 50-50 into everything to even consider a deck like that. And even then, like you want a deck that has high roll routes where you can just lock out a game, and usually the best decks have some sort of way of doing that to into certain matchups. And this deck just kind of feels like Amber Steel that doesn't have that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have Tiana to make things very awkward. None of your stuff quests for nearly as much as Amber Steel does. You don't have Lady. You're kind of just playing like an honest game plan and kind of getting there sometimes, it feels like. And sometimes it feels like if your opponents just have their standard curves, it's like never good enough. With that being said, I can talk about what I think is like the best builds. It seems like Thiago has kind of gone away from like the Treasure Guardian, like super heavy into that, which I think makes sense. If you're seeing more stuff like Amber Steel with Fire the Cannons, you don't want to like have to force that. It is still a good card draw, and like obviously Palace Guard, I don't want to devote a cannon to that or a strength to that. So like if you played more Palace Guard, Treasure Guardian might be fine. Just don't fall into the trap of playing the Cobra on 3. I think other than that, like there's not much else you can put in the deck that improves the Amber Steel matchup. The Skater is one thing. What I noticed though with the testing was like as long as you played around it, it's like not doing enough for their board immediately to where it's like putting you super far behind. They kind of have to just like not respect it and hope you don't play it and then play into that and get punished for it to do much. Going into Ink, I think I tested this matchup for like 2 days because I knew people like playing it, and it was like 50-50. And I think the deck has been improved like a lot since then with me adding Aurora. So I think it might even be like favored a decent amount now with certain Aurora lines. Troubadour is something that helps a lot versus this matchup. And if Aurora kind of buffs what you can do with Troubadour, then I think it has a good chance of being a very good matchup. I can see the line of it where you go Aurora plus Troubadour going second into Tiana plus like a one-drop character like Daisy. Into strength being just completely the game is over, just because Tiana's down at that point, and versus this deck, like getting through Tiana is very tough unless you have your own strength and you took out their strength or their singer target for that. So I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of Purple Steel. I think if you're gonna play it, just play Amber Steel. Like just play Amber Steel for a while. If you're a diehard Purple Steel player, play like 20 games of Amber Steel. Try to learn how it feels, and like come back and tell me that it does not feel like you're playing with like a few cheats in your Purple Steel deck.
I would agree with that. I think it's telling that Purple Steel was the second most represented deck at Denver and only maybe had one, but I believe it was 0 in Top Cut. I think that's pretty damning for the deck's performance. I think illusions are a lot more exploitable, and moving away from illusions definitely makes sense. As a green blue player, I can say like when they're on illusion heavy and I can just improvise something, like it feels like I just blow out the matchup a lot. But I think even in there could be some cooking in Purple Steel that happens over the next week or two to maybe find a way forward. But as it stands today, I definitely think it's the fourth best deck in the room, which isn't great.
Yeah, I don't know what it's like particularly trying to target, if that makes sense. Like, cause like at the start, like people were saying, oh yeah, this has like the most game into Amber Steel, right? And like you said, Sky, like you can kind of just build it in a way that it's still extremely difficult. I think you described it perfectly, where all of these decks, well, at least like so green, blue, and amber steel have like super high roll ceilings that you can do, right? And then
Hmm.
Blurple, like you said, Joseph, is like if they just do that curve, like their curve is just so strong that it's like kind of unfair, like their
Very
curve is just
consistent.
like super, super, super strong. That yeah, it's really difficult to see what this deck can do against it. I think that the reason why people are still a fan of it is because it just combines two of the best inks in the format, technically. Steel, which has access to dock and strength, like strength being one of the best removal pieces we have in the meta right now, and then purple just having all of this access to card draw. So I think people maybe just have an affinity for that and want to pair these two strong inks really together. But overall, I think I agree as well that um, it's it's probably the fourth best deck at the moment. But people still have time. People will still cook, and we have a couple of weeks of tournaments coming up to see what happens as well. So yeah, that's all of the deck list that we have to discuss today. Before we close it out, I want to just like continue a few more discussions. I'll start with you, Joseph. I've heard some rumors, some whispers. People have been telling me that like the dogs deck, lemon lime dogs, is some people are kind of cooking stuff up in the background. I know we previously saw like level 9001 make like call it like the Chroma Dog deck with the Emerald Chromacon and yeah, but still very much having this kind of core package. How do you feel like that deck could do into this, maybe expect heavy Amber Steel expected metagame?
I'm not too sure. I definitely like it into slower decks a lot. As a green blue player, I'll admit that dogs is a scary deck because it's like Amber Steel, but they have Ursula, and that's terrifying for me. It's got some good potential. I've seen Ghosty, who's been probably like the biggest dog player for a while, do some absolutely disgusting things with that deck. And of course, Diego level 9001 had a great run of it at the Sunday 5K or at CCS with it coming top four, I believe.
Hmm.
So it's definitely got some good potential. You've got some good options. Level was on Chromacron, which I think is a very strong card right now, and can absolutely scramble the brains of your opponents when they try to figure out how to play around it. It's definitely something that can be explored and could have some real sleeper potential.
Yeah. Sky, any thoughts on the lemon lime dogs deck?
This is a deck that I definitely would be interested in exploring in the meta that I think will come out. Like Joseph said, having Ursula versus Green Blue is kind of scary because they kind of just
Mm,
have to keep it under the sea for that matchup, or else they're just, if they don't play it on the exact turn they need it, it's not happening. So I think that's better than Pete into that matchup, which
Oh
is
yeah.
nice. I don't think I believe in the Chromacon very much. I think the deck without it is just very strong. I think if I were to do anything with the deck, I would play Under the Sea inside of it. It gets you points in the mirror, gets you points for Amber Steel. Um, it's not always going to pop off, but like you have stuff like the Tramp 6 cost, it's like a super efficient singer.
Hmm.
There's also just ways around certain things in the meta that's like tough to deal with traditionally. Versus Amber Steel, going wide and just threatening with the Tramp that gives plus attack into a Tiana. Like sometimes you can just get something to hit for 7. You don't have to pay the tax on Tiana. So there's definitely like some upsides there. Uh, do I think it's better than the Amber Steel Aggro? Probably not. You can't do stuff with Aurora. Um, a lot of your most powerful lines are super contingent on that 6 cost tramp and
yep.
going like 6 cost tramp for either one or for free, and then hitting another one out of the cards that you filter and playing it. That's very strong, but it also still, gets under the seed. So like all your stuff has less than 2 attack. I don't really know what the Blurple matchup is like. I guess in that one, that's probably the most important thing to
It's
take
pretty
into.
good as far as I know.
Okay, sure. I mean, if the Blurple matchup's good, I think yeah, there's definitely there's decks that I would much rather play than or less rather play than dogs for sure.
Yeah.
I will say it's another deck that is a little bit vulnerable to fire the cannons, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Depending on how you curve out, of course, if you can play cards that don't die to it. But with that deck, having keeping stuff on board to reduce Tramp's cost is really important, and potentially having a one-drop shot by cannons will feel really bad.
Interesting. Yeah. I think for that deck as well, it's like the Tramp is so good. It's like so consistent for the deck's like draw engine. That outside of the tramp draw engine, it's like really difficult to get cards. Whereas like, what Amber Steel can do with the dock is it just yeah, it just that's how you kind of keep going. That's how you keep getting your fuel. Whereas in the dogs deck, that might be a little bit trickier to do. Although granted as well, it's like if it's not specifically under the sea, the 2/8 is difficult to remove. But then like okay, if you're against green blue and you snipe the under the sea or something, they've still got like Mother Knows Best. They still got You're Welcome. They still got like ways to like kind of remove it. But against the other matchups, I think it's interesting to see how well it would do. So, yeah, I think after I've messed around enough with green blue, that might be a deck I want to explore because, as everybody watching the podcast knows, I really like those colors.
I'm with you. I wish Yellow Green Control was a bit better as a set. It's probably not quite there, but it's tantalizing. Maybe next set. Give us some good Amber songs, please.
Sure, yeah. Well, yeah. With that, that's pretty much the end of the episode. The one thing I will say is, I haven't looked at it yet, but I know that Dr. Jacilier, which I didn't realize, this is Justin, I think, right? Like the blue steel player, has another Lorcana puzzle. So I haven't looked at it. Like the puzzle did really well on last week's episode of the podcast, which was like the Blurple player versus the Amber Steel player. I believe this time it's green blue versus Blurple maybe. But yeah, it's going to be on the screen right now. Feel free to pause, check it out. If you're listening on audio platforms, come over to YouTube. These Lorcana puzzles have been really fun, and yeah, props to the creator, because I think it's really difficult to set up these board states and imagine this like super super complex way of like how can I win the game or at least stop my opponent from winning the game. So I've been having a lot of fun with that. Before we close out, I want to give everybody the opportunity to say like maybe some future events that we're all going to be attending. So for me, next week I'm going to be at the Cardiff CCQ Europe's first Challenge Championship qualifier, which I'm super excited for. I don't think I've publicly announced this yet, but I've been told I can. I won't be playing it. I am actually running the production for that event myself. So I'll be doing the stream broadcast, the overlays, the graphics. I'm actually really excited because for me, obviously doing the podcast and stuff, I understand the importance of putting on a good show, showing good information, making sure everything's clean, making sure that people can also tune in and watch what's happening, right? Like, what's the metagame over in Europe? Like, I mean, we're all us Europeans are watching the American tournaments, and like, I want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to watch as many games of Lorcana as possible. So I'm excited for that. After that, I'll be doing obviously Bologna, where I'm going to be casting. So hope to see everybody there. And then the final one I'll say is yes, I'll be at DLC Milwaukee as well. So anybody that's there, really excited to meet more of the NA community. So Sky, I think the biggest question people have for you is, you've got the invite. Is Sky just gonna, sit back and relax and chill out, or are you still gonna be on the road as you always are?
No, there's like this big string of tournaments that's been happening, and I guess it started with Arkansas for me, so I'm still kind of on that road. I guess the next one for me is in 2 weeks. It's in Glass City. I think there's like a 8K and a 5K or something like that. So I'll be there. After that, I'll be in Milwaukee. It is nice to have the invite and to kind of have that pressure off. But I'm still going for Golden Mickey. That was kind of my shortcoming last season, was I didn't quite get there. I was just short. So we're still going to be trying hard. So yeah.
Awesome. And Joseph?
I didn't know you were going to Glass City, Sky. I will see you there.
Okay.
Over in not this week, but the next week, and then after that, I'm dry until Milwaukee. But looking forward to seeing both of you there. It's going to be such a great time there, seeing everybody.
Yeah, super excited. I know I saw some stuff on Twitter of people saying, can casters play in other events? I don't see why we can't. We haven't been told otherwise, right? And I think it's actually kind of a nice opportunity, like for myself and Kim, if because we get to cast this one. We also love playing this game so much, so the opportunity to kind of come over to the US, meet more of the community, and also play over there is going to be super fun. Like, I had an absolute blast at Ink Inc, meeting Sky, meeting the other Maelstrom boys, and JDZ, Color, Garrick. Like, shout out to those guys. I think they absolutely crushed it on the cast, and everybody else that was on the casting crew for the PPG CCQ as well. So yeah, I just like hanging out with people. Like you said at the start, Sky, like this game it's community based as well. Like, we love to compete, we love getting deep into all these discussions, but like just getting to meet people, man, is is really, really awesome. So looking forward to meeting all of you guys at some upcoming events soon. Before we close out, I will also give you guys the opportunity if you want to give any shout outs. I'm sure, Sky, you probably want to mention the team, of course, which I have to say all of you guys have been crushing it this season so far.
Yeah, for sure. Shout out to my team, Maelstrom. Love all the guys on there. It's been a blast getting to be a part of that this last month. Shout out to Heavy Play. That's our sponsor. Got to use their sleeves this whole weekend. They were awesome. No complaints there. Shout out to my family for all being supportive. It's always great to have, support from back home for hobbies like this that you can kind of, be a little bit obsessive about, and some people don't have that. So it's really great to be have all of them in my corner. Yeah, that's all I got.
Shout outs to my team Enter the Battlefield, always supporting me in my endeavors. We're very close knit. And shout out to our sponsors, Endgame TCG, our sleeve sponsor, and Twin Moon Studios, our mat sponsor, which help us travel out to all these events. Really helps load there. And if you want to get more of my insights on Green Blue, you can find my Metafy guide over at Metafy at Pandemonium Heart, where I have an extensive guide on Green Blue if you want to pick the deck up.
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you guys so much. Again, everybody be sure to check the description for the socials of Sky and Joseph. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. If you guys enjoyed it, the number one thing you can do is leave us a review over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, your local podcast platform. There's a video version available over on youtube.com/Podcana podcast. Hit the subscribe while you're there. Twitters are at Kawatech_CG, at SkyLorcana, and at JQuigster. I want to say.
Yeah, you got it. Well
I
done.
got it. Let's go. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.